Hey everyone, welcome to another episode of the Takeaway Club, where I talk to interesting people across different walks of life to get to know their stories and, more importantly, how they got to where they are. In the latest episode of the Takeaway Club podcast, I have with me Nishtha Anand, a best-selling author, Tedx speaker, and previously a strategy professional in investment banking. Nishtha, a gold medalist, graduated from Indian Institute of Foreign Trade, Delhi, and has spent the last 10 years establishing herself as a collaborative young leader with the distinctive ability to ideate and implement transformation projects focused on people, processes, and culture. During her career, she witnessed a lack of women leaders in different arenas across corporate, academia, bureaucracy, and driven by her passion for inclusion, she started to work on her book, Awakening the Rainmaker, a guide to gender equality for individuals and organizations, with the vision of forming an equality handbook for daily life, which is now the number one ranked human resources book on Amazon. In our conversation, we talk about the state of gender equality in India as things stand, the many nuanced topics from her book, and some crisp practical takeaways on implementing a truly gender neutral culture both at workplaces and households. Without further ado, let's jump straight into the conversation. Hi, Nishta.
Hi, Chris. Thank you for having me over.
Yeah, absolutely. Happy New Year. Recording this on January 1st, 2022. And I couldn't have asked for a more special start to a year than talking to you.
Same here. Happy New Year to you. To actually the first podcast of the year I'm recording with you.
It's such an honor. I read your book. The book, of course, you have a copy right behind you, and I have one here too. So it's called Awakening the Rainmaker. So it's a book on gender equality, and it's one of those books that doesn't, it doesn't come off as, from a place of, high horsiness or something like that. It's a very practical handbook, something that everybody will be comfortable reading about such a delicate topic. We'll talk a lot more about the book, but before we get there, I'd love to understand a quick background about what you do and where this idea to write a book came from.
Chris, I worked in the industry for over a decade now. I started my career in investment banking, and I've been a gold medalist before that through and through. I'm a DU gold medalist. I'm a MBA from Indian Institute of Foreign Trade, Delhi, and I did the whole slew of things where I won many corporate competitions, was always active, and got good exposure. And then, of course, started my career in an industry which most people swoon for, investment banking. And there I could see that there were not many women at very senior positions, and most of the women who were there were, in junior to mid roles, or were handling operational departments like HR, legal, and ops. Then I consciously moved to the field of strategy after that, and I was exposed to multiple business lines working across Asia. And there again, I would see working very closely with the CEOs and founders, that I was often the only woman in the boardroom. And most, again, the same story would repeat, that most women would be handling operational departments versus meaty P&L roles. So that always somewhere stuck in my head. And it also then reflected back on my days when I was a student in MBA colleges, where you again see that the gender ratio is not very good. My batch had a gender ratio of 1 is to 10. So just imagine, when you look at such fewer girls around you, you tend to think, okay, where's this missing XX chromosome? Like, where are most of the women? Why are we lacking in role models? Why are there such less stories around me? And then 3 years back, I was pregnant with my first child, and my husband and I were, of course, happy about the news, but we were just surprised on how this news was affecting both of us. For him, it didn't matter much, at least on the surface. For me, there would be people who would advise, okay, now you should focus on your pregnancy, or raising a child, take a break, those sort of things. And I'm a voracious reader, and I read many books around this on how to manage a career and a family. But I was surprised that there was not much written for Indian women, and the things that were available in the market mostly talked about what a woman can do in order to have it all. So that's when this idea came to me that no, why wait till 60 years to do something about this? I want a better world for me and for the next generation of kids. I want to do something about it right now. That's when the genesis of this book came about. And I wanted to write something practical, keeping in mind the realities of Indian women who are treading multiple paths of, parents, in-laws. If you're working, then your corporate stakeholders, your spouse, your partner, your children. And in the process of writing the book, I interviewed some of the most powerful women in India, as the 50 most as per, Forbes and Fortune, CEOs, CMOs, the women in STEM, sports, you name a field, and I tried to cover a woman because even research shows that girls, if they have a relatable role model, the chances of them pursuing their passion and ambition increases by 70%. And I like those odds. And of course, in the process, then I also interacted with diversity experts of organizations which are doing well in the domain, because I wanted this book to also become a policy handbook for organizations so that they know what they can do and what sort of culture can they offer to their employees so that they can make a career for life at the end of the day. So that was the long and short of the book.
That's amazing, Nishtha. So we all come across a lot of, for the lack of a better word, issues or problems that we feel very passionate about, but uh, most of the time it just ends up being a discussion during a coffee break or a rant on social media. But the way that you took that same thing and turned it into something that is literally going to be around for as long as reading is going to be around. That's super inspirational. And we'll come to the approach itself to the book. You mentioned how you have interviewed successful women from across fields, whether it's sports or scientists or CEOs, bankers. Uh, that in itself, I found was a very interesting way to structure the book. But before that, I want to understand what went between the genesis of the book and actually getting this book into shape, right? So you don't necessarily come from a writing background. Correct me if I'm wrong there. So what is that process like, trying to figure out how publishing works, so who to reach out to, or how do I put a first draft together and all that?
Sure. So you're right. I don't come from a writing background. I've always had a flair of it because I was the editor of the finance magazine in IFT. I have a white paper published in my name in the Asia Pacific Business Journal on the relationship between stock markets and an inverted yield curve. So things, when it comes to writing, things have been very finance centric for me. But writing on such a topic was, of course, a very new thing that I had taken up as a project, I would say. In terms of what went from genesis to finally getting the book published, so I think these 2 cents would be very helpful for any aspiring authors out there as well. Of course, I think first of all, if you are aspiring to write something, be it fiction or non-fiction, the first thing is have a clarity of thought in your mind. And always, whenever you're writing something, know about your target audience. For instance, in my case, I knew that I wanted to solve a certain problem, and I wanted to write a book which would cater to both men and women. Because, like, and you would be surprised, Chris, I have received such positive feedback on the book by men as well. They are like, many of them were like, we were already sold on the idea of gender equality, but your book just lights a bulb somewhere in the head. It really even relates to us. It's not like, man hating sort of a tone that has been taken up here. It's very constructively written. So as an aspiring author, that's very important. Have a clear vision in your head. that who are you writing for and who's your target market for the book. So once you have that, then you have at least your first draft of the manuscript ready. This book again, I took close to a year to actually get the first draft of the manuscript ready. And in this process, it's very important that you do, share a certain chapters and do some brainstorming with some trusted friends or family, because feedback always helps in really tightening your work and manuscript a little. Once you have your manuscript in place, if you do like, you can always, look out for freelance editors to sort of, tighten the language for you a little, to just make it more reader friendly at the end of the day, if you feel that your grammar or English is not to that strong levels. Once that is done, you start reaching out to publishers, and there again, you don't have to send the whole manuscript in one go. You start with framing a proposal, wherein again, you give a synopsis for the book, you give a few sample chapters, and then you also include a section on the target market and the any marketing thoughts you have for the book. Because as an author, your job doesn't just end by writing the book. Your job is for this book to, make a difference in the world, especially when it comes to this book. So even that clarity of thought can really help the publisher also know that you're invested into your book and that you're serious in this being a change instrument. And once, of course, your proposal is ready, keeping into account all these different sections, send it out to as many people as possible. And yes, then it's just a timing issue that you hear from them. In my case, my proposal was accepted by 3 publication houses, and that seldom happens for a first time author. So it was a great validation for the topic that I had written on, and for all the inputs I got from all these phenomenal ladies. And then at the end of the day, it was a little bit of a fan moment for me too, to go ahead with Bloomsbury, the publisher of the Harry Potter series, for everyone out there. But at the end of the day, for aspiring authors, if you're writing something with true intent and you feel that that content is strong for your target market, you'll find it easier for your book to, get publishers on board.
Right. That's super useful. So everything that you said was a new learning for me. I'm just curious. So how did you go about writing? So did you used to do it like in late nights or over the weekends, or was it a full time thing over the past?
I took it as a full-time thing, because I knew that. So, of course, there are many people who also write books along with their day jobs. But I wanted to focus on this book, because it was not like, because I wanted this book to bring about a change, and I just wanted to focus on this, uh, be very focused on this, because it was not just about research, it was about doing all these interviews as well, these different diversity experts, these various women I got from across fields. And you won't believe, Chris, I felt like this was like a full-time thing that I was doing. I would have written like hundreds of emails, then hearing back from some, scheduling those interviews, and just putting everything in shape. So I was like, no, I want to focus on this fully, and I want this to be, I think that way I'm a perfectionist somewhere in my mind, because I just wanted this to be the best version of what it could be for everybody out there.
Yeah, that's super interesting to hear. And speaking of interesting things, so as you mentioned, you have interviewed a lot of successful, amazing women. And for folks listening, the way the book is structured is so you have your account of a particular theme or topic, I should say, and at the end of which it's complemented by something that you call as the Rainmaker Speak, which features some expert, successful women from an industry giving their view of things. So that in it itself is not a very mainstream approach, right? So in a way, like it's like a partnership that you have between these different women, in each chapter. So what was that part of ideating it like? So did that just like occur to you, okay, so I'm going to write a book about gender equality, so this is like the way to go about it? Was it like a right off the bat thing, or something that struck you as a eureka moment in the middle of doing it?
So I think this was actually, yes, a eureka moment in the middle of doing it. So when I started off with this book, my focus was just to focus on corporate India. And when I started doing some reading, I was surprised to know some of the statistics. Even I didn't know those. For instance, our female labor force participation rate is distressingly low at like 22, 23%. Or in the prime working age of 30 to 50 years, 3 out of 5 women say that they are sitting at home attending to domestic duties only. So this was a shocker for me. I'm like, no, if I want this book to bring about a change or for women as a species to be respected, I cannot ignore the 80% who are at home as stay at home moms and stay at home wives. That's when I broadened the scope of my book. And if you see, the book then starts from the upbringing bit of things, because that is where the true change needs to be brought about. The way we are bringing up our young boys and girls, we need to give them the confidence that they can do whatever they want to unrestricted by their gender, be it for girls or be it for boys as well. If they want to go into any profession which are not really, as per the societal template, let them do it, let them explore. So that's when the scope for the book broadened, and I started with gender neutral upbringing. I moved on to assertive demeanor, for how people should really carry themselves, be it at home or outside. In order to be valued for whatever they're doing, they first need to respect themselves, and they need to have the confidence to command that respect from people around them as well. Then moving on to the choices you make, whether to be a stay at home person or if you want to enter the corporate world. And if you do enter the corporate world, then through the power punch framework that I talk about, what you can expect from your organization so that you don't feel guilty for your biology. So that is how it just moved from across my writing journey. And when I envisioned this, I was like, wow, I need to, for this to be relatable for women out there, I need these success stories too. So that's when I decided to interview the women across fields, different fields that I've covered, the likes of Zia Modi, Meher Pudamji, entrepreneurs like Naya Sagi, Lizzie Chapman, sports people like Jaspreet Sidhu, the captain of the Indian national basketball team, Chavi Mittal, the digital actor, digital influencer, YouTuber. So those are included as Rainmaker Speak, like the highlights for readers. And then if you see that I have these multiple case studies of real people on a name change basis, which have been included in the book, like a case study of an Arya or a Natasha or a Rima, those different case studies, because I wanted people to know that they're not the only ones. I didn't want this to be a book, like this person who has this decade of experience has written some anthem on gender equality. I wanted it to be as relatable as possible. And I wanted that people should not feel lonely in their challenges. Like, I wanted to tell them that there are more real people out in the world who are facing similar challenges. And then there are these extremely successful women who have also faced those challenges. So that's when all of this came together to include these real life examples.
It's a good thing that you brought up the case studies as well. If I recall this correctly, so one of the case studies talk about this woman called Seema, and how you didn't understand why she had taken a step backwards in her career when it came to her maternity leave, or Kalpana from ICICI, who might have, unbeknownst to her, made a wrong call that might have made her juniors, women, shy away from uh, being more vocal, right? So I really love this tone that you have to the book, that there is a certain degree of vulnerability to it. You don't like go about saying, hey, I am a woman, so I've interacted with women all my life, so I know how they are like. You don't do that. So there is so many instances where you're like, I assume this is how another woman thought about things, but I
Hmm.
stood corrected when that was not the case. So I saw this women who thought, this was the right thing to do, but that did not turn out to be right. So
Right.
just I come across a lot of social media posts, even though they have, it comes from a good place, the tone somewhere gets, mixed up, right? Where men doesn't feel a part of it. It's like, hey, I am not sure I am able to relate to it, because it feels like the person who has written this, they seem to know everything there is to know, right? And I am not in a place like that. But you don't do that with your book. So just walk through that approach.
So you're right. The book actually I didn't want it to be preachy at all. Like I wanted it to be very relatable. And here again, Chris, when even I was doing the while writing the book, when I was doing the research, even I was it was an eye opener for me also. So even I grew in my perspective of gender inclusion and diversity while writing this book. And I'm very open about that fact in the book. For instance, you're right, the conversation you mentioned about when one of my friends who was working at a very senior positions, and she when she became pregnant and she decided to take a break, even I was surprised and I was like, is someone pressurizing you for it? Won't you be wasting whatever you have worked at so far? And then I realized that even I had that unconscious bias in my mind somewhere, right? Because this is the pressure of being the one off that I talk about in the book also, that unconscious and conscious bias that most women often put up on themselves, the pressure of being the one off, like they have the onus for the entire generation of women on them, that they would be judged if they take a step back, and then what will the organization say, what will other girls feel, that even do they have to also take a step back when they start a family. But I was like, wow, even this bias needs to be corrected. You if you are taking your decisions from a position of strength and it is solely your decision taking into account your well-being, then you should have the freedom to do whatever you want. And that was an eye opener for me, and that's what I also wanted to include in the book as well, that once you enter parenthood, and same for men, right? Now you have paternity leave in place, which again I have touched upon in places in book as well, when I talk about that even men go through these pressures, that they need to be the breadwinners. Or with paternity leave, there would be men who feel like, they may want to take it, but they may feel like, okay, what if my manager will think that I'm a softie, or that my promotion or my variable pay may get affected. I've touched upon those facts in the book as well, that for both men and women, equality is about them being able to take the decisions they want to, free of any judgment. Let them pursue the path they want to, and in this the organizations have to support it by tracking data through proper policies and implementation, and of course doing those de-bias drives. So I wanted to bring all of that in a book, and I wanted to, as a author, I wrote the book. I wanted my readers to feel that I am one among them. I have been through the same curve and the same journey, and I've just tried to put together all of this in like a one 300-page book for it to become like a go-to handbook for them, and even use it as a go-to handbook if they're facing any challenges in their organizations. Just because in India you wouldn't find many organizations investing in a full-time DNI, like a diversity and inclusion officer or an equality officer. In those cases, this book becomes a very readable, like there are chapters on policies and how to implement, how to track the data. Just open the book and start having an open conversation with your manager or the leadership level in your organization. And you will be surprised, Chris, the amount of support that is there for the equality agenda when it comes to organizations, corporates, and even men, because men are really important allies in all of this. They are the majority currently, and needle will not move unless they are truly invested in this agenda. And the good part is, men as spouses, as fathers, they have become more invested because they see their wives trying to manage a career. They are more invested in the achievements and education of their daughters, and that has really been a good instrument of change. So I wanted all these relatable aspects to be covered in the book.
Yeah. So as you mentioned, so the best way to describe this book would be like a practical handbook for companies, right? So this would make for like a terrific read for uh, somebody like a leader or a reporting manager, but at the same time, somebody who's just starting out or uh, co-workers, right? So you have tied down all of these different stakeholders in something that you call as the power punch framework, right? So for folks listening, in a corporate sense, related to gender equality, what is the power punch framework, and how does an organization take away actionable items from once after they learn about it?
Sure. So I got this. The Power Punch framework came to me because it's like a boxing analogy sort of that I formed. Like just as you want, if you have to deliver like a powerful punch, you have these five fingers, and they each have their own important role to play. And for a solid fist, for you to deliver a solid punch, all of this has to work together, right? For you to like go all strong and all out there. So that's where it came to me from an organization construct also. I said for any organization to be able to make the best out of the human resources and the workforce that they have, they need to have a power punch at play. Because even you would appreciate, Chris, today the war of talent is actually very large. There is dearth of good talent, and every organization is spending millions into hiring people, into retaining them, into training them, right? So you need to, for you to make a lot of business sense from the dollar amount that you're spending on the human resources of your organization, it's very important that you give them a conducive environment too. And for that, this power punch comes into play. And in this, I have defined five influencers, which are very important for any employee to be able to give their best in the organization and not be bothered by, factors like the age they are at, or their marital status, or their parenthood journey, or those things. The Power Punch framework actually outlines for an organization how they should work so that the employees are solely judged on their merit and what they bring to the table in terms of performance. And these five influences are, firstly, leadership, because leaders set the tone for everything. There is this very interesting quote which came from my interaction with Zia. She's like, if the tone on diversity and inclusion is serious enough by the leadership level, that change will cascade throughout the organization. So the tone of the leadership is very important. So a leadership. Second is your reporting manager, because he or she is a very important factor in how your career pans out. It's not wrongly said that people often change organizations not for money but for a better boss. So that reporting manager is a very important influencer. Thirdly, your peers. Even your peers play a very important role in your working journey. The juniors who work with you, the subordinates, whether you feel respected enough. Like in the book, I talk about this very important bias, like the queen bee syndrome. There are often subordinates who feel the same negative feedback when a male manager is giving, they take it more constructively, versus when a female boss is given, you feel like, oh, they sort of take the liberty of giving feedback back to their female manager, or they feel like, oh, she's extra critical about things, because they in their mind are used to more participative style of management by females, maybe, right? So the juniors. And the most important one of the most important ones is the HR, the human resources, which I call as the umpire. Like, compared to a cricketing match, like they are that neutral party who needs to hold all of this together. And often HR is looked at like a demand, like a supply function. Ki, okay, they're just there to support, but they can play a very important role in being a demand office. Like they need to demand that accountability from all of these other stakeholders to actually build that solid fist. And all of this has to be supported by conducive policies in any organization, like the likes you already have, the paternity leave, the maternity leave. things on mental well-being and wellness. So all of this, when this comes together, makes corporate systems more efficient systems, and you can actually see better financial performance as well. If your organization is implementing Power Punch in the true sense, you will see improvement in your profitability, in your net margins as well.
Right. You actually go on to give examples of some of the successful companies uh, who do this not for the sake of PR, but actually from a place where they want to bring about meaningful change. So, to that end, what are some of your favorite campaigns as a woman that you have seen companies roll out, uh, which you thought were, really big strides in the journey to gender equality?
So the few organizations, very interesting things that they have done. For instance, I've as a consumer as well, like as a consumer brand, Procter and Gamble, P&G has these beautiful campaigns, and they're highly invested into socially responsible advertising. They're like, we take our brands as they are like an instrument to bring a social change. They are an instrument to spark a conversation in the right direction, like the Ariel share the load advertisement that has been running by P&G. You won't believe, Chris, the change that they have brought about. So when they started with these ads wherein they showed, that men have not been doing laundry, something as basic as laundry. Many men do not even know about it or don't take part in it. And when they started the campaign, close to 79% of Indian men actually said that they do not know how to do laundry or they don't take part in it. Once this campaign was started, this percentage went down to less than 50%. So just this simple ad campaign was able to bring about a change in the Indian society where men started realizing and they started sharing the load on these basic things. Or then there is this another campaign by their the child, the diaper brand Pampers. They have Pampers, it takes two, which talks about, it takes two people to bring a baby in the world, and it takes two people, both mother and father, to really raise the kid together. It cannot be disproportionately a woman's job. So that is another campaign which I really related to, and I really laud the work that they're trying to do. Or something which they did in the US, Ole Make Space for Women, where they actually showed an actual astronaut in the ad talking about, that the spaceship doesn't know the gender of the person in it. So as girls, if you want to pursue a career in STEM, do it. That is where the idea, then I further read into the field of STEM, and I have interviewed Dr. Rohini Golpode, the Padma Shri Indian physicist, or Dr. Sujata Ramdurai, the renowned mathematician coming out of India. I included their stories in the book as well. So this is one brand that I really like the work they're doing. Another brand I would like to name here is Sodexo. Sodexo is doing this very interesting thing. So these are the organizations where women are actually represented at the leadership levels as well. It's not like their gender ratios are only about junior level women, but they actually see women in their executive committees and leadership teams. So Sodexo has done this beautiful thing, which I feel that more and more Indian organizations can also do. They have allocated 10% of the variable pay to achieving the gender diversity and inclusion targets. So that actually sets accountability in place more firmly when there is, monetary incentive related to it, when there is some value related to it. And I feel that is a very good step which can be implemented by more and more organizations.
Right, yeah, huge shout out to some of these brands as well. Um, Slightly switching gears here, something that I wanted to talk to you about is the social conditioning. What I particularly found interesting was ending that passive messaging, right? That women are inferior. You know, a simple example, like let's say a woman goes on to ride a bike, right? You don't like uh, raise eyebrows over it. uh,
Right.
so this I found was probably the trickiest to bring into practice, because I think for the folks who do as well, uh, their intentions are good, right? So hey,
Mhm.
you're women. I'm not used to seeing a lot of women ride geared bikes, for instance. And I'd like to
Mhm.
take this moment to appreciate what you do. But what you suggest is let that go by. Let's not make a deal out of it. You also give a parallel example to how Tapsi, when one of the interviewers called her the female Ayushman Kurana, she was like, no, I'm the first Tapsi, right? So
Right.
uh, where do you draw that line where people want to be encouraging about the fact that women are taking bigger and bolder steps, and at the same time not making a big deal out of it, so that that becomes the norm as opposed to something exceptional?
So actually, you're right. No, so the book, what I've tried to say is, of course, laud a woman's achievement, and that is required today. As a woman, if you feel that you've accomplished something, because most women, again, it's the chinks in our upbringing, as I call it, we are very shy in promoting ourselves, right? So as a woman, get out there. If you've achieved something phenomenal, big or small, don't shy away from promoting yourself or from highlighting your achievements to the world. But in doing so, what I talk about in the book is, if you achieved something worthwhile, it's not like you're finally matched up to being a man. Often in Indian families, you would hear, little girls being told that ये हमारी बेटी नहीं है, बेटा है. If she has, if she's, and I'm sure even you would have heard such comments around you, like if a girl has scored well in exams, or she's landed a good job, is financially independent, you will hear people around saying ki, yeah, she's finally matched up to being a son. That is the messaging we need to break. A high achieving woman can be happy in her achievements as a woman, as a daughter, as a wife, and as a mother. Your achievements have nothing, they don't have to be qualified by your gender. That is what I talk about in the book. That when a Tapsi said that, like she being called Bollywood's female Ayushman Khurrana, was again equating her success to the yardstick of a male actor's success in the industry. And that needs to be broken. That needs to be broken. A high achieving woman has to be lauded for her achievements as a woman. It's not like you're finally matched up to being a man. That messaging has to be broken right from the childhood stage. When I talk about gender neutral upbringing, you need to raise your boys and girls equally, and you need to appreciate them for their respective achievements, whether it's your son, your daughter-in-law, your son-in-law. Just laud the achievement, and not equate it to their gender.
I love this. So that's one of the part that I really wanted to dig deeper into from what you have mentioned in the book. And for folks listening to this, I highly recommend you pick up this book. And in particular, so the gender neutral upbringing was something that I found super interesting and eye opening in a lot of ways, right? So before we close off this conversation, you cover a lot about how we can go about fixing this or bringing gender equality, whether it's at home or whether it's at workplace. And so all of which can be summarized as women not handing over the steering wheel uh, to men when it comes to their life decisions, right?
Mm.
So what is a message that you would like to give along those lines for folks listening?
So I would say for both actually men and women, it's about not handling your steering wheel for your life to any other person in your life. Basically, sit in the driver's seat of your life and make your choices the way you want them to be made, free of any judgment of the society around you. And most importantly, for both men and women, if you're not happy with the way things are going in your life, don't be afraid to question the status quo. The way I've mentioned it, so like as a woman, if you feel that you're not finding time to pursue your passion or ambition, don't be afraid to question your circumstances. and seek support from people around you, be it your family or your organization. You'll be surprised by the amount of support you can get if you ask for it in the first place. And for even men, if you feel that you're not able to pursue your passion, which is again, you should have the freedom to be a caregiver or a bread earner, whatever you want to be. Here again, you don't have to be in that, society's stereotype of, no, I cannot really relay my emotions or have those conversations. Have the courage to have those conversations, again, be it in your organization or your home, and you will be surprised that, as a team, how much more you can accomplish and how much of a fulfilling life you can have if you take that approach.
That's such a nice note to end this conversation on. But before we wrap up, where can people find you, and where can people find your work or reach out to you for feedback or comments, or just continue this conversation with you personally?
Sure, of course. I'm pretty active on social media, on LinkedIn as Nishtha Anand, of course. On Instagram, I have this account called Nishtha Anand underscore author, where people can reach out to me, have those conversations. I put some interesting content around this topic of gender inclusion and equality, which people can actually go to for their continued dose of motivation. Yeah, those are the two main channels that I'm reachable on.
Thank you, Rishta, for taking the time to do this conversation and for writing this book. So I would have probably mentioned this a couple of times already, but in a touchy topic like this, it's very easy to get into a sullen tone that doesn't really relate, especially with the other gender, right? But I did not find a page here that was not inspiring or really made me to look forward to things rather than bemoan at how the state of things are. So thanks for the way that you have crafted this book, I should say. And I wish you all the success in 2022 and years to come, and really look forward to hearing more from you around topics like these.
Thank you so much, Chris. I'm glad you liked it. And I'm happy to see that even young folks like you're like the leaders for tomorrow. And it's really heartening to see that you've embraced this book with such an open mind and helping me, of course, to make this book reach out to as many people as possible. Because I do feel, that something really magical can happen when you read a good book. And I am borrowing this line from my one of my favorite authors, J.K. Rowling. And I really hope that this book can bring about that magical change in India towards being a more inclusive and a more equal nation.
Hey there, so that wraps up a conversation that I absolutely enjoyed recording, and I hope you did too. If that's the case, kindly consider leaving a rating on Apple Podcasts, which will help the Takeaway Club find new like minded people like you. Also, consider subscribing to the Takeaway Club. So, we are at thetakeaway.club as well as thetakeawayclub.substack.com. Just hit the subscribe button, it's free, and you'll get all the latest episodes and other articles that I'm working on straight to your inbox. Have a great day ahead. Thank you once again for tuning in to the Takeaway Club.